A marriage of convenience. I'll do this story straight out of my imagination in a conversational style, and there'll be no pictures here, no sketches, and I'll leave it up to my imagination, but more importantly, your imagination. So it's about a marriage between Linda and Charles, and we'll set the time period 1980. We'll make it 1980 so that I can get the right timing for the social attitudes. Charles is a very conventional man, upper middle class, and he's a businessman who works in the city. His wife Linda is a classic supporting wife. He's the boss of the family unit, and he essentially is the breadwinner. He's important, and he makes this known. There's an age gap between Charles and Linda. Not that it was important when they initially met, but this age gap maybe starts to become more important as time goes on, because we're heading into the late 70s here and into the early 80s. So on the surface, the couple have everything they want. Charles is successful, he has a successful career, he makes good money, enough for them to have a city townhouse and a lifestyle. They even have, wouldn't say they were servants, but they have some people who help around the house, here and there, do some work for them. The stuff that posh people would find tedious. So they get a lady or two in at times to do the washing and tidying up, tedious stuff like that. Charles is probably now starting to head into his early 50s to mid 50s, although his old school manner is, in a sense, if you looked at him with his old fashioned, almost Edwardian style of speaking and presenting himself, always dressed in a suit, he now was speaking silver hair and a stony type of nature. Doesn't give much away about his emotions. It's always straightforward business talk and perfunctory relationship with his wife, in that he asks her about her day, but almost as if he's not really interested. And she has to, of course, ask him what's been happening in the exciting world of business, and he will give her a few nuggets of information. And but at the stage in life where he's heading into middle age, later middle age, it's almost like there's no connection with them. On the other hand, Linda is a younger and attractive woman who's sociable, and she's a kind of woman, she's got longish, straight black hair, or dark brown possibly, and she's always well turned out and has a pleasant and pleasing personality. Her helpers in the house, the ladies, she always treats very respectfully, almost as if they are her friends, and in fact they are. She's friendly with them and they're friendly with her, whereas Charles is standoffish. He sees them as domestic staff or even servants. So, as they met as a young couple, Linda was young, maybe only about late teens or 20. Charles would have been a mature man, even at that point, maybe about 35. So she would have been very impressed by this man who was getting on in life, and he would be able to take care of her, provide for her. So this was all how it started. But at this stage now, sometime many years on, there's not a lot happening in the marriage. Charles is always, it's all about his image, him being a provider, him being a businessman, and he gets all his kicks from identifying as a financier, and he goes to his gentleman's old boys club and all that type of thing. So in a lot of ways they've become more and more separated in their outlook, their values, their views. And Linda has a nice group of friends. She does her charity work, and her organises social events. The type of thing that Charles allows her to do, but he's not in the least bit interested. So for Charles, it's all about his self-importance. For Linda, it's about having a normal life and a purpose, rather than just being the wife of Charles. So perhaps 20 years has gone by, there's no children around, and so it's at the stage here where Linda feels that she needs to develop herself in life and do something with more purpose than just everyday socialising. And so as they sit at the dining table, there's just stilted conversations, and as the staff serve them up with their evening meal, and then Charles will start looking at the newspaper, whatever. There's not a lot happening there, and there's frustration, social frustration with Linda. It's becoming obvious now that she's done her pace by supporting him, but she's not getting anything for herself. And over the years, Linda has been interested in expressing herself in writing. She's written some poetry, and she's written some short stories. She's mentioned this to Charles, but he maybe heard her saying the words, but I wasn't really listening to her, and so there was no positive feedback from him. He probably thought it was just all trivia. But over a period of time, Linda's thoughts have been developing in this area, and with good feedback from her many friends. Linda's the sort of person that gets on with anyone. She's very charming and respectful, and people respect her. She's been getting good feedback from her friends about her writing, and I suppose they've asked her, what does her husband feel? Because and she's said, well, don't you think he's in any way interested? So our friends say, why don't you ever consider publishing a novel? And this is an exciting idea for her. I said, yeah, well, I've thought about it, and, well, why don't you? Your stories are good, they're enjoyable, and you've got a talent. So, encouraged by the support of her friends, Linda does just that. She works very hard and puts a lot of hours in, and after about a year, she's produced a fully fledged manuscript. Linda's the kind of person who has good female friends and platonic male friends. So she's not without connections in the right circles because of our socialising. So she suggests to someone she knows, a man, that to look at it in view of it perhaps it being published, and this man has got influence. He works for a publisher. So out of courtesy and friendship, he said, well, certainly have a look at it, the manuscript, and he does, and he's quietly impressed. He thinks, yes, actually, not just is this good, but I think it would actually be a book which would sell. It's maybe I'll actually see as we put it to the department and see what they can do. So this is what he does, and there's a good reaction, and they go through the process, and Linda publishes her first novel. Meanwhile, Charles is becoming more and more distant, and is not aware of any of this is actually been happening. He's too busy hanging around with his cronies. And so the hardback copy comes out of the book, and we're now into the early 80s, and times are changing, and it looks to be that Linda has got her finger on the pulse of what people are looking for in terms of a good read. So what she's done is based the novel on her middle class lifestyle, and she's gone for the idea to make it sex it up a bit and make it a bit racy. So she's putting in a narrative which she's got affairs and sexual encounters and perhaps things that maybe she fantasises about, and she puts it all eloquently into her novel. She gets a minimum distribution, a short run at the start, and then she's very excited to see a copy of her book in the local bookshop, and it says the local author with her first novel. But what she probably wouldn't have expected was the incredible reaction. She would maybe be expecting a few friends to be talking about it and buying copies to support her, but very soon people were turning up at the bookshop and saying, "Have you got that book?" And it was selling very well. So the publishing company decided to do a much bigger print run with a much wider distribution. And what happened was it was becoming a roaring success. So much so that Linda was invited onto publicity shows on the radio, local radio, and offers were coming in for her to speak at women's groups about her writing career and what her inspirations were, and she was becoming a very, very popular person in the media. And all this was passing by Charles, who hadn't even realised anything was going on. So things had developed to a point that when Linda and Charles were out on the street at times as a couple, or going to do their shopping, as they're unloading their car, people will be coming up and going, "No, it's you." People will be coming up to Linda saying, "You're that lady author," and saying, "Can you sign a copy? I got your book. Can you sign a copy for me, please?" But what was amazing was that women of her ilk were coming up and greeting her and asking for signed copies, or asking her to sign their copy. But even older teenagers and men as well, she was becoming universally popular with her, what amounts to a fairly racy novel. It was, how could I put it? It was turning people on at a certain level. It was an exciting lifestyle, perhaps a bit torrid at times, and they couldn't wait for your next. People were saying, "When's the next one coming out? I can't get enough of this sort of stuff." And she was now becoming a thing. So much so that some of Charles's cronies had to point out to him that his wife was very impressive as an author and successful. And he was thinking, "I don't know anything about that." And his cronies were, "Yeah, my wife's got a copy of it, and I have to say I've read some of it myself, and it's very good. Charles, you should maybe have a look at it." This does not amuse Charles at all. His wife being that prominent and popular. So, reluctantly, without letting her know, he gets a copy of her novel and reads it all the way through. He can't actually put it down. And there's very specific passages where Linda has described this man and how amazingly attractive he is, and describes him physically, his energy, his vigour, his virility, and it's so in such authentic detail. This is what's turning people on, and this is really unsettling, upsetting to Charles. He's angered, and so he decides to hire a private detective and pays him a lot of money and says what he wants to know. He doesn't want to have any repercussions in particular, nothing that would embarrass him, but he just wants to know who she's been having an affair with over the years while he's been at work. And his instructions are, I don't care, do what it takes, I just want to know who that man is she's describing. And so he pays for these people to investigate her life, eavesdrop on her surveillance, to find out who she's been having an affair with, and in particular the man she's describing often. And his friends who he's harrying are thinking perhaps Charles is overreacting, and saying that, she's a talented writer, she's just inventing all this. He said, it can't be. It's too detailed, it's too authentic, it's too real. I just want to know who that man is. So after all the different investigations from his paid for cronies, nothing comes up. So he says, well, if you can't do it, I'm going to do it myself. So there's a very frosty atmosphere at the dining table, and Charles, with his old-fashioned Edwardian style on a stony face, decides, this is it, I've had just about enough of your popularity and your racy novels and your career. It's all about you and your career. So he confronts her directly. He says, okay, it looks like probably we need to separate, but just do me just one thing. Please, just one thing before we go our separate ways in life. Can you just tell me who the man is who you're describing in that book of yours, your book? And she says, it's you, Charles. When we first met, that's who I'm describing. That's what I've lost over the years.